Um, so I want to thank everyone for attending this session here on Saturday. I This is of the two presentations, the one I did yesterday on understanding queer and trans geographies, and now this one. This is the one I've been looking forward to the most. I did this presentation at a different conference, I want to say back in 2014, and hadn't touched it since, and been kind of retooling this and thinking about it for quite some time, and figured I'd just bring it back for this year's A&M and see how this will go. Hopefully it will go very well. Please ask any question that you may have. I don't see the chat real well since I have this on full screen. So if you do have something to chat, just say something and then just get my attention, and hopefully I'll address your question and everything. So as you saw in the description, this is about how to build an organization, whether it's your state party, your electoral campaign, or your organizing campaign, or even another organization that you're affiliated with. I'm really taking this in a very creative direction and providing my own thoughts, not only in my experience as an organizer, a campaigner, but trying to insert my experience as a tennis professional. As you can see, I've been a college coach since 2003 with a very, I would hopefully feel a very successful career record. I have coached on many levels, from community colleges to NCAA in high schools, and like even currently a junior team tennis, which is the image you see right here. This is our team winning our district championships in Northern Illinois. Next week, we're actually going to South Bend, Indiana for the Midwest Championships. We're already in the top 8 in the Midwest. Hopefully we can win that to go to Nationals in Florida, there in Orlando. And so I'm kind of taking that experience as a tennis coach and how to apply it into what we all do and everything. And I've kind of done this myself, really thinking about it in these kind of terms. Things I have seen and done in tennis, and things I've seen and done through campaigning, organizing, and being in different organizations, and how, to splice those things together to have very successful outcomes on both arenas, if it were. And I'm sharing this with everyone here as well. You don't need to know anything about tennis to understand. If I do say a tennis term that you don't understand, please ask. Be more than happy to explain what that is. So this is where the direction I'm going with when it comes to this session. And there's 2 things that I'm just going to be touching on. One is actually building that team, and the other one's about thinking strategically. And I think these are the 2 big areas I feel that when it comes to, from my view as a tennis coach and a tennis professional, these are the 2 big areas that I need to focus on when developing a team and thinking as a strategic thinker, as a coach, even as a player, and even in my other roles within either Green Party or organizing projects I'm on, or with other organizations I work with. I too got to think about the team as well as thinking strategically also. So so let's talk about that foundational things about building the team. If we build that team, we're going to have success. And success can look like many different things, They can be the big wins, getting someone in office, advancing legislation, getting something done in the community, whatever that looks like. Even in tennis, it's winning that team match. It's meeting a professional or a personal milestone. It can look like different things. But when it comes from a team perspective, one of the things that we have to understand is group dynamics. This model that you see here is a typical model that you would see anytime you're talking about team building, group dynamics, wherever, or even in the business realm, nonprofit sectors. This is the model that people use also to this day. So to go over this slightly briefly, so we all start in this forming stage, kind of like this group here that you see in the image. Forming can look like many things. It's starting that new chapter. It could be bringing new people into the organization. It's whatever that looks like. So it's that first gathering of something. Folks that don't understand the aims and the objectives of said organization. So that's that forming thing. It's that immediate thing. And right after that is this storming phase. So when we say storming, we're actually storming up ideas. What are the things we're trying to achieve? What are the roles that need to be done? What are the personal milestones that you want to achieve? So in this storming phase, and this could not, how do I say this? This cannot be a very brief thing. It can't be just writing it on a sketch piece of paper and then moving on to the next thing. No, each of these things right out of forming takes a lot of crafting to do. We have to sit down. We have to plan these things out in this storming phase, and we have to understand where we want to be at. How are we melding this group? And just like a tennis team, anytime I sit with my new players, I have to tell them, like, here's the expectations. Here's what we're looking for. Now tell me what you're looking for. What goals you want to do. How can I help you in doing that? Same way with our organizations we're involved with. We need to have that open dialogue in order to achieve those things. So from there, we go from norming, this normalizing phase. We're normalizing the things that we just stormed up. Okay. And then, so we're trying to set those milestones. What does it look like from 0 to 6 months out? What does it look like from 6 to 12 months out? What does it look like from 12 months to 36 months out? You get the idea. And this too has to be well crafted also, so norming and storming, these are the two stages are always in flux, so this model looks like it's one circle, but bear in mind, you can go from norming back to storming at any time, so once we have normalized these aims is when we start performing them. We start carrying those things out and what have you. And again, we can go from performing right back to storming, and that happens. And a lot of organizations neglect this, just because we're a high performing stage, they feel that we can't go back and storm things up. No, this is the thing about organizations. They have to be in flux. The pandemic that we've had, all of us had to storm back. What does this look like? How does canvassing look like now? How does meeting people now look like? We had to go back to a storming phase. And then how can we perform again as a local chapter, state party, national organization? You get the picture. We had to do the same thing in tennis. When the pandemic hit, we had to go back and, like, what does practice look like? Can we do it indoors, particularly for those of us in the Midwest? How can we interact with our players that we need to be in touch with, So this is what this model looks like, and as you can see, from performing back to storming and norming, and again, we're back with this flux of flow that's happening right here. Oops, excuse me. Oop. So when we talk about run practice, oops, here we go. So when I talk about run practice, as many of you here can imagine, we in tennis, just like any other sports, we have to have a practice. As a college coach, I've had practices from 6 in the morning right up until 8 in the morning. My players went to classes, and then we had practice again from 5 until 7, Monday through Friday. And so we did 2-a-day practices, and so those practices look like how do I practice with the team on things I'm seeing overall that the team needs to work on. I had to pull players aside to another court and work on them on individual things, whether it be their serve, a volley, a strategic approach on something. Just have that one-on-one conversation with them. That's what we need to be that's what we have to do as coaches when we go to the next match or the tournament or whatever the case may be. So you're probably thinking, what does that mean for us? We don't have practice, and that's what I feel is a problem. In my experience within the Green Party and other organizations, we don't practice as activists and organizers. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that we don't often take time to set aside in our meetings or outside of meetings some sort of a political education program or a training, anything like that, in order for us to practice. How are we doing effective canvassing? How are we crafting our messages? How are we doing the direct actions that we need to be doing? Those are the kind of practices we need to be doing. We just can't come to meetings and do the business meeting and then leave and then have a social hour. And those are necessary things, don't get me wrong. And I'm not bashing those things. But what I'm being very critical of is that we don't practice in our organizations. Other organizations that are doing this effectively, the IWW, I've seen this in organizations in Chicago, I've seen organizations in New York where they set some time aside and talk about something with political education. It could be political theory. It could be an idea. It could be something else. But they also did trainings like a direct action. They went out in the streets and did realistic situations when it comes to field work, So these are the kind of practices we need to be doing. If we don't practice, then our campaigners are not doing things effectively. Our candidates are not doing anything effectively. And we're going to see the same results every single time. Every single time. I've seen it, you've seen it. And these are the kind of things we need to be doing. When I talk to my players, when practicing, I tell them exactly that. If you don't go and practice, whether you set up a private lesson with me or with a tennis pro at a nearby tennis facility, if you don't put in what you need to put in at a team practice, then you're going to have the same results over and over again. You're going to have the same record. You're going to have the same errors that you're going to be having. And that's why we need to have practice. We gotta practice. So talking to individuals and talking with their team, the unique thing about tennis is this. It's both an individual sport and a team sport. And primarily, if any of you have seen like US Open, Wimbledon, French Open, Australian Open, for tennis fans, it may be other tournaments. It's pretty much an individual sport. Or if you're playing doubles, you're playing a doubles event. Hardly you ever see team events, unless it's high school or in college. If you're a tennis fan, you're playing Davis Cup, which is the international men's team tournament, the Fed Cup, which is an international women's team tournament. You get the idea. So because tennis is unique in that way, it's just like track, just like swimming, you know, what we need to do as coaches, you know, we have to talk to individuals and we need to talk to the team. And we have to talk. I got to talk to my players individually with their unique circumstances in order for them to achieve the certain things they need to be doing. Same way with the team. I got to talk to my team before we get on the court and do match play or the one thing I got to do a clinic on. We got to talk to folks like that. Just like organizations, we got to talk to individuals. We got to talk to our organizers. We got to talk to campaign staff. You know, we got to talk to them individually and understand like what's happening, what needs to be doing, what's the one-on-one things we need to be working on, so forth and so forth. As a team, we got to talk to the team, whether it's your campaign manager, your field director, an advisor, campaign advisor, organizing director, whatever the case is, you know, state party leaders, organizational leaders, they have to talk to the team and understand like what's happening, you know. And I don't think we do that often also, from my observation, you know. I'm not at every single meeting, but the meetings I have attended and things I have been a part of, we don't have these conversations. We just have things, you know, a little bit more homeostasis, you know. It's just, it is what it is, you know. If we don't talk to the individuals, and if we don't talk to our team, then we don't understand what the problems are. If we don't understand those gaps, then how are we going to fill those areas that need to be filled? I don't need to go in this a little bit more than what this needs to be, but we got to recruit. Recruiting is very important. And this person is a junior player that my team just played. He's top notch, as you can see, a blue chip player, freshman in high school, just won state here in Illinois, back in May. And this is on a website that I use, called Tennis Recruiting, you know. And as a college coach, you know, these are the tools that I have. You know, I can see their ranking, their national ranking or regional ranking, state ranking. If you go down a little bit, I can see the tournaments they played in, how well they did, where they're from. And so these are the things I need to understand the people I need to recruit for my college team, or even my current junior team I have right now. Myself and the head pro at the local tennis facility, you know, we had to recruit area high school players that did very well at the state tournament and elsewhere, and bring them in and sit down with them and talk to them to be in our team. So this is very vital. You know, we need to recruit. I don't need to explain this to you. Recruiting is important. So if there's someone that we need to bring on as a team, then we need to understand, what does that look like? What does a recruiting plan look like? For me, in organizations I've been involved with, I actually had to reach out to them and meet with folks, having coffee with them, dinner with them, you know, at their house, whatever it took to sit down, talk with them, explain what our organization is, what we do, what we hope for them to come into our said organization, and how we can build a relationship from there, and how to make them a member also. You know, those are things I've done outside of tennis and the various organizations I've been a part of. So we just need to recruit, you know. But even more important, well, not even more important, equally important is retention. If we don't retain the players, in this case tennis, if I don't retain the necessary players I need to have, whether all 4 years in high school or however long I need for junior teams or whatever, if I don't have a real retention plan, then I'm not going to have the same team or that same high performance team I'm going to have for the following year. And just like for us, if we don't retain the people in our organizations, the faster burnout rate is going to be. The faster we're going to have these conversations about, are we even going to have a campaign next year? Are we even going to be an organization next year? You know, and I think all of us have seen this in one capacity or another. So equal to a recruiting plan, we need a retention plan. So how are we making sure the necessary people are staying with us? You know, what are the things that we need to be doing to ensure that they're a valuable asset to our organization and specifically doing what they need to be doing and what have you. So retention, think about your retention plan. What does that look like and how we can implement that? Where am I at here? Strengths and weaknesses. We have to know our strengths and weaknesses in our organization, you know, and a lot of folks will balk at this of having a strategic plan, which I'll talk about strategy here in a moment. But we need to have a strategic plan. And that strategic plan has to have strength weaknesses component to it. So when you sit down and do what's called a SWOT analysis or SWOC analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunity, challenges, but the strength and weaknesses component to it is really thinking about what is our strength as an organization and what is our weaknesses as an organization. And I don't think we do this often also. I feel like we kind of put this off to the side and just, again, continuing on every year if we're doing electoral actions or we're just organizing for the sake of organizing. We're just not really thinking about the strengths and weaknesses of our organization. And just like tennis, you know, I have to analyze all my players and understand, okay, is Lucas up to his game coming next week when we go to South Bend? You know, is his baseline game really well? You know, why is he still serving into the net even though we've been practicing it for 2 weeks? Is Carly ready? You know, when we have her playing mostly singles in South Bend also, you know, is my doubles teams ready to go after we've been practicing for the last month leading up to going to Indiana? You know, we have to constantly evaluate this, you know, and just like our organizations, we have to constantly evaluate, you know, what are the things that are really working for us and where are those weaknesses and how can we reinforce where things are weak? You know, do we have to do away with something? Do we have to change something going back to group dynamics? Do we have to go back to the storming stage and go back to the drawing board and so we can normalize it and perform at the highest level that we can and everything? We got to be doing this. If we don't do this, we're gonna have an ineffective organizations. And I think a lot of us have kind of seen what ineffectiveness looks like also, you know. But we also know what very strong organizations look like. And we have to look at that also and say, you know, what's working for them? How are they performing the way to be performing with just a very small crew, you know? So gain inspiration from those strong organizations and see what you can learn to make yourself strong, but also evaluate, you know, if we're being weak, why are we being weak? And we need to improve on those things. before I go any further, are there any questions before I go into like the second half in this session? Is there anything that you want me to expand on what I just mentioned on the building the team?
Except for that you've got part of your screen covering up your presentation, part of your home screen. So otherwise you're doing fine. I concur.
Okay, here we go. Well, hopefully that's better. If there are any other questions, then and thank you for that, Jeff. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to spend a little bit of time here on being strategic. As you can imagine, tennis is in my view, a very strategic sport of all the individualistic sports out there. So I mentioned I've been coaching since 2003. I've been playing tennis since 8 years old. Playing high school, playing college. Did a very brief stint at the professional level, pretty much the minor leagues of pro tennis. And, been competitive also at various clubs and everything. So strategy is a very vital thing when it comes to tennis. If we're not being strategic, and I've kind of alluded to this up until this point, if we don't think strategically, then we're going to see the same results. We're just going to. So if we're not gaining an examination of the landscape that is before us, if we're not thinking about that, then we're just gonna have a status quo, or dare I say a lackluster results when we're doing this stuff. And so when I talked about group dynamics, and playing things out during normalizing phase, this is where we start thinking about a strategic plan with short, mid, and long-term goals. Any organization you're a part of, when you're talking about organizing or even electoral action, you got to have a short, mid, and long-term goals. And if we don't have these things, then why are we even doing this? And also part of that being strategic, are you providing the kind of training and education in order for others to think strategically also? Because I just can't hammer this enough. I mean, we just got to provide that kind of training and education for folks to also think strategically. If I had one of my players not show up for a month, first thing I ask them when they come right back, and I had a player do this before, haven't shown up to practice for a month, and he's waltz right in. First thing I ask them, I go, "Are you ready?" "Yeah." "Okay." Go in. Out of 100 forehands, 20 of them he's being successful with. Volleys, out of 100, only 30% he's winning off those. His serves, not even effective that they were a month ago. And the same player got frustrated. I couldn't understand. I go, because you haven't come to practice. If you don't come to practice, whether it's during practice time or outside of practice time, if you're not thinking about it or doing it, these are the results you're going to get. And this is how you practice now. it's going to happen during a match. And just like for our organizations, if we don't put the strategic plans in, we're going to be producing the results that are bound to happen. So we have to set these goals. I think all of us have kind of seen this. When we're trying to set these goals, are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they achievable? Are they realistic? Or are they timely? I won't go into every single one of these because this alone could be our 45-minute conversation by itself. But if we don't set goals in this outline, and if we just don't, then we just might as well pack up and not even talk about what we need to be doing. And I'm not even going to say which one's more important than the others, because every single one of these is important. We can't lackluster on the specific side or the timely side or realistic side. I mean, we just can't. We have to think through these things and put hard numbers and goals down when we're doing this plan. I guess the one caveat I will say to this on a timely, things happen. I understand that. So you may have some wiggle room in order the timely phase. And if the pandemic taught us anything, it's exactly that. So a lot of us had very timely goals pre-pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, a lot of us had to adjust the timeliness of that, so there may be some wiggle room for some things. Some things aren't expected to come out, but we still need to put these down. Can we get this done next month? Can we get this done in 10 months? You get the idea. I can do a whole clinic with y'all about tennis strategies. There's thousands of them for singles and doubles. Some are more effective than others, but it also depends on the situation that you're talking about, So if one of you are asking me about, what do I need to do with a strong doubles team, I can give you easily 5 different things in order to dissect an opposing doubles team, but you also have to give me a scenario as to, what is happening in order for me to give you a more precise strategy that you need to be doing, and this comes with practice. Anytime I have my players do match play during practice and everything, I stop them or let the point be over and have them tell me their thought process when they played a strategy out, so if I see a shot, it's like, okay, so tell me about that. Why'd you hit that shot? And they will probably explain to me, it's like, well, I thought I saw him move, so I want to hit the ball right behind him because I know their partner can't run to their side, so I figured that was the most effective shot. Okay, thank you. Continue, because I want to hear if they're thinking it through, And just like for our organizations, we have to do the same thing when we run practices. Let's run this through. Specifically in the IWW, we have organizing training 101, OT 101. And there is a certain segment in OT 101 where we talk about direct actions. And we actually do an exercise of a direct action. It's called the March on the Boss. And I just ran one not too long ago in Milwaukee, where my branch is. And we had a new group of folks who joined, who took OT. Me and the other trainer had this new cohort run this exercise, the March on Boss exercise, 4 times. because each time they were doing it, they were getting certain components of it correctly, but we wanted them to really understand what was wrong, what the approaches they were doing were wrong, and had them run it back. And as I explained to them, it's not just OT 101. Come to branch meetings. We have a union hall now in Milwaukee. Use the union hall to come in and run these exercises. We have an office space. We have a little big space, so we can do a scenario where there's a boss in the office and workers are coming in and what have you. Do that. Just like other organizations, run exercises for your canvassers, where they're actually going to a neighborhood, take them to an actual place that's, one of your members' homes, give your members a scenario when the canvassers come up that they have to perform a certain way. It could be this disgruntled person. It could be the staunch conservative that they have to knock on the door for, whatever the case may be. We have to run these strategies and what's going to be most effective and everything, so we just got to run them. So in tennis, there's a little bit of sports science to it. As you can see here, these are just examples. We have to really understand how are we going to take our players from a certain level and get them to another level. So whether it's a beginner stage, and take them to an advanced stage, and if they're at an advanced stage, how can we even take them to an even more higher performance than that? I want to draw your attention. I wonder if I can do this. Okay. So specifically the image to your right, where it says plateau. Oh, cool. So this is an area that we don't want to be in at all. We really don't want. Here we go. So this plateau my apologies. I just think this is cool. So we really just don't want to be in this stage at all for tennis, and that's going to happen. Even the Roger Federers of the world, the Rafael Nadals in the world, the Djokovic's of the world, the Serena Williams of the world, they're all going to have a plateau. You may not see it, but they do have a plateau. It's now trying to get them from here and how to bring them up here. So this is the direction we are trying to get to, is this new potential level. And it's not even just a whole new performance. It's trying to, can we get their footwork a little bit better in order for them to be successful? Can we work on this serve so that we can increase from a 25% effectiveness to now 45% effectiveness, So like these, like sometimes they're little things, but if we're talking about new folks, it's trying to gradually get them up to a whole other level in everything. So just like in organizations, a lot of us plateau. A lot of us get burnout. A lot of us need to step away from things, So we sometimes don't see that we have folks are just doing the bare minimum, or just coasting in our organizations, And if we don't see this, and we're not really elevating our game. But if we do see this, this is where we need to talk to people individually. This is where we need to talk to the team in order to get to a whole new potential level. Even if it's just this much. So this is where peak performance really needs to come into play, you know, because as organizers and campaigners, we have to reach a certain peak performance, you know. Speaking for myself, I have to do a series of things in order for me to be better. And if I don't do that, then I am not going to help my state party, my local organization, this campaign I'm on. You know, I'm just not going to perform the way I need to be performing, you know? And so this is where we need to harness this. So if we don't harness this peak performance, then everything else just won't matter. Now, this is probably one area I will say you might scratch your head on a little bit. This is one of these tennis terminologies. So in tennis, there's something called a forced error. What that really means is if I just saw someone in here. If I thought I saw Mike McAllister in here. If Mike and I were playing tennis, I'm trying to hit a shot so that Mike can respond to it and either hit it into the net or hit the ball out of bounds or somehow just mess up. Okay. Which means I'm hitting a very strategic shot in order for Mike to force Mike to make an error. So this is what forced error means. If you talk to tennis players and coaches outside the United States, which I have, coaching in Europe before, and talking with other international coaches and the global South also, I asked this question just to kind of reinforce if it still holds true, which it does. That if you ask them, you know, when you think of a player from the United States, what do you think of? They'll say big serve, big forehand, which is true. Which means that we go for winners as tennis players in the United States. We don't focus on footwork. We don't focus on effective volleys. We don't think of a backhand at all. We need to have a big serve and big forehand, and I can go on a tangent on how that became a problem, but I'll save you from that. I kind of see some similarities like that in electoral action and organizing, that we always think about the W. You know, for us, that's the big serve and big forehand is the W. We just focus on the W, which means we focus on getting someone elected. We want this legislation passed. We want to stop this legislation. You know, that's the only thing we think about is just that. But we don't think about is making strategic moves in order to force an error on our opponents. Now, you're probably thinking, what does that look like, AJ? That could look like a number of things. Partly, it could look like creating the kind of messaging for you to put out there to force your opponents to say X or Y. I sometimes do a presentation on political communications, campaign communications, and I talk a little bit more about this in detail, but the preview for that is we don't think about framing the message in our favor. We just go for facts and figures, logic, to if I dare say, to make us look and sound smart. But looking and sounding smart doesn't win votes or pass legislation. It just doesn't. It builds a base for sure, don't get me wrong, but it does nothing when we're fighting an opponent. So we need to be thinking about like something like that. We maybe have to think about, how can we think around the bend, if it were, in order for our organization to be ahead of another organization. So that could look like, has anyone talked to a community on the west part of town? How come the other groups haven't? Well, maybe we need to reach out to them and see and why they're not speaking with them or working with them. So like these are a couple of things, and I would love to kind of workshop this with others if you guys want to now or even afterwards. But we really need to be thinking about how are we forcing an error on the other side, if it were, because we can't think about the W all that much. We can put it up there in the strategic plan. We know that's the obvious. We know that's the thing we need to be going for. But outside of the W, we need to be thinking about what are the strategic moves that we need to be doing in order for us to forcing the error on the other side and then making us look good on the other end. And just like any other sport, you're always under pressure. Whether you're in a intense match where you're equal to someone, where there's a little bit of inequality when it comes to match play, like me playing Rafael Nadal, I know what those outcomes are, so I'm more under pressure and everything, but I'm gonna work my ass off in order to get, hey, I just need to beat him I just need to beat 1 point off him. If I just get 2 points off him, great. If I can out volley Nadal, awesome. But like tennis, we're always under pressure. Ballot access, not having resources, not having the capacity, not having other resources at our disposal, so we're always under pressure, and just like one more example, a little bit of insider baseball, if it were, but inside tennis ball. There's a difference between coaching NCAA Division III and coaching NCAA Division I, and that are the rules. So there are some rules that your UCLA's, your Stanford's, your University of Alabama's Division I level play different rules versus your University of Chicago, your Concordia University, Wisconsin's, your University of Wisconsin Whitewater Division III teams have different rules, which means different rules for recruiting, different resources at your disposal. Like Division I can give out tennis scholarships. Division III, I can't give scholarships. I can't give any funding out for a player, so there's like even that kind of pressure, even as a coach. So, and this is just like a lesson that we need to be thinking about, like we're always under pressure. And so what makes an organization better or even individual better is how are we thinking around that pressure? Are there any creative ways that we're thinking of? What are ways to practice something that we won't be under pressure as much? So that means we know we can't debate with a certain person, but we can debate with another person in order for us to look good on the other side. We may not look good through this newspaper because of their bias, but we can look good through this newspaper because it will be on our side because of this journalist and what have you, So because we're always under pressure, we always have to be thinking about ways around that in order for us to elevate our game, and if we don't, if we don't work out of this pressure, then we're going to suppress, and that means morale is going to be low, people are going to be burned out, people are going to leave. And I think many of us have kind of seen this example also. So that's what I have. Any questions? Any questions that y'all have at this moment?
Hey,
You can either
okay. Yes, I'm
unmute
still
or
here.
raise your hand to go on step.
So ultimately, we're all volunteers. And, you can, just creating plans doesn't necessarily make sure that everyone's on board and able to generate or to fulfill the plans that we make as much, as, sometimes we get we get unrealistic, or we just, we understand the process that the challenges before us are great. How do, as a coach, how do you motivate?
Well, and that's a very good question, Mike. And to your point, yes, majority of us are volunteers in these organizations. And as a coach, other than my Division I teams where we pay them to play, to work, others, they were also kind of volunteer. They volunteer to be on Division III team. My junior players now, they volunteer to be on this team. My high school teams, they volunteer to be in the tennis programs and everything. So, so like them, and just like in our organizations, this may sound, I don't know how else to say this, but we all know why we're involved, and we're not getting paid enough to do this work. But who else is going to do this? And I've said this before, whether it's in this groups or even in my tennis teams, I'd rather work with 6 people than 16 people who are not going to do anything, So if I have 6 people who are willing to do the work that needs to be done, I'm willing to work with them and provide the results that we need to be doing, which means we may have to adjust our goals for sure, but I'd much rather do that than having a team of 16 that are not going to produce the results and everything. Now, having said that, there are models out there that we can look at as organizations. One group that is very underrated is the mothers of East Los Angeles. It's a group in East Los Angeles of women that started out fighting against the prison industrial complex in East LA that was going to be developed there I believe during the 80s. And now they are a large organization that fights for environmental justice and continue on fighting for racial justice and fighting against the prison industrial complex also. They're made up of volunteers, and it's made up of all these women that are involved in everything. And they rotate different positions that they feel that they can be doing. So they recruit people. Hey, can you do communications? Hey, can you do the fundraising? Hey, we need someone to go out to downtown Los Angeles to do a rally. We need some folks to go to City Hall, you know? So we need to be thinking like that also, you know, we need to kind of build a team so we can start putting them in different positions that make sense. Now, another thing in team tennis is I have a slot of 6 players for singles and then 3 doubles teams. As I tell all my players, just because you're position number 1 doesn't mean you're the best player, doesn't mean you're the number 1 player on the team. You know, some may outshine in others for sure, but if I have a team of 6 that are equally great, if I put you in number 3 spot, it's only because I need you to beat the number 3 person for the other team that I know you can win, you know, and I'm willing to sacrifice a loss at number 1 or number 2 just to get that win, because I know at the end of the day we'll get this team result, you know. So that's the kind of chess that we may have to play at times, you know, and everything. So there's that. And then, yeah, we've got to motivate our volunteers, and that's encouraging them from a group dynamic standpoint. It's like, look, I know you're a volunteer and we appreciate the time you're putting in and everything. We may have to provide certain incentives. If we have enough money in our organization's coffers, you know, it may be providing pizza or buying them coffee or providing a social event during the month and just saying, hey, you know, you guys are doing great. Let's all go to this diner and just meet up because of the success, and we appreciate you all and everything. You know, we can do those little things to kind of boost morale from time to time. So I hope that answers your question, Mike. Rick, I see you next.
Yeah. So I came to this workshop because I really liked the metaphor of sports teams and politics, although I have to admit that my involvement with sports teams is limited and embarrassingly poor. But so what I want to raise is what my current situation is. I don't know if this is appropriate within the Green Party, whether anybody, you or other people, want to respond to this, but I have 2 practical problems, and I'm wondering whether we can get more insight into that. And one of them is actually a rather good problem, that in San Diego, where I work, we've gone from a low point of 1.2 active people roughly to now we've got several new volunteers. And I'm concerned with the problem of how to integrate these new volunteers into our work and to maintain their momentum and give them an opportunity to develop, especially when the political work that we do is often episodic, because it is paced a lot of times by the electoral schedule. The other problem is I'm a co-chair of a committee at the state level, and we've just recently revised our bylaws. So the committees have changed both in terms of their membership and also in terms of their expected functions. And I'm wondering whether there are any insights that you or other people have as to the most effective way to manage that kind of a transition. I don't know that it exactly has a sports analogy, but perhaps it does. So if anybody has any insights into either of these, I'd be happy to hear them.
So just for my clarification, Rick, can you just clarify your last question for me, just so I can understand it?
Oh, the second question is, so I'm a co-chair of a committee at the state level in California. We've recently passed a set of bylaws amendments that reorganize the committees. So we're going from one committee, or it was a working group actually, that had a certain mission and a few people who had been working on it consistently. We've now consolidated that, so we have effectively put 3 committees into one. And one of them is defunct. One of them, I'm not sure what it is. And so we have to figure out a strategy for rebuilding a new functioning committee based on the work that we had been doing previously that was only to a certain extent overlapping. It's like you're taking your tennis team and say, okay, now we're going to play baseball next week. Does that clarify the question?
It does. And just for your second question, I'm going to refer back to this group dynamic. So we all have done this before in our various organizations where we had to revise bylaws. And that means we have to merge committees or working groups into a singular one or whatever that looks like. So the very thing that you're describing is that, you were performing at one level here, right? But now, because of this revision, you have to go back to this storming phase, which is part of the nature of it, So this is where you and your group need to be settling on, okay, so now we're revising the bylaws and now we're doing this, we're going from 3 entities now to 1. What does this look like? What are the objectives? What are we trying to accomplish here, right? So that's your storming stage you're right back into, So whether it's during if you have a state coordinating committee, or if it's just within your core group or your membership, whatever that looks like when it comes to decision making, or having a whole separate work group to kind of focus on that. This is where this storming, norming stage dynamic is in play. So this is where you need to spend some time on. Could be a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, however long it takes that you and your group feel that you're settled in order to go from storming to norming back to a performing stage once more. But keep in mind, it's going to be in a cycle because some things may work out, some things may not. So you may have to go back to square one, which is normal, To your earlier question about
can I make a comment about that before you move on?
Sure.
I absolutely agree with you, and I was thinking about that when I was looking at your first slide. I just want to one of the problems that we will encounter in that situation, and we encounter this all the time, I think, not just in the Green Party, but people are very impatient to move out of that phase and move into the getting shit done phase. And you often end up actually wasting time and energy by doing it that way. But it's a problem that maybe you've encountered as well, to emphasize the significance of that stage. Because in the long run, it actually saves time and increases your efficiency.
So here's my response to that. And I know this because this happened to me not too long ago in a different organization where a certain group where I strongly told them not to do a certain action because they were too young, and they went ahead and did it, sometimes what we have to do, and this is where we some of us individually may feel hesitant about this, but it's got to happen. I had to do this over time, and now I'm in a place where I can do this, and I do it with my tennis teams, is that allow it to happen, but don't let them fall completely on their ass, because let it happen, let it happen, and be there when they fall, or if they do fall, be there and bring them up and say, okay, so what happened. Don't just be there. I'm like, see, I told you that wouldn't work. What the hell were you thinking about? You know, don't do that. Rather, it's like, so what'd you do? Okay, why'd you do that? Okay, I understand what you did, but do you think we could have done this way? Do you think we could do the other way? You know, the delivery at times when we try to talk about it also is also important too, right? So let things happen, be the net to catch them, talk about it, and then, you know, let's move from there, you know, because we can't really handhold a whole lot and everything. And I just want to answer your other question, and then there's some other people with raised hands. So to your question about volunteers, I'm a big believer on having some sort of like membership orientation. So when new volunteers come in, do some sort of membership orientation. That could be 3 weeks. You know, I'm working with a local DSA group where they actually do an orientation where it's a 3-week program where they talk about political education, how their organizing approach is and everything. Same way with a tenant union I'm doing in Milwaukee, same thing. I'm designing that training for them where they have new folks in the tenant union, then they go through this orientation of here's what the tenant union is, here's how they organize, so forth and so forth. Does that make sense, Rick?
Yes, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Sean?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, thanks. I really enjoyed your presentation, first of all. I'm living in Santa Cruz, California. For probably the past 2 years, I've been providing pro bono data services for campaigns, helping them analyze the registration database, finding targets for walking, mailing, calling, etc. And primarily that's been through a local political action committee that really came out of the Sanders 2016 campaign. It's largely Democrats, but some independents. You know, I'm a registered Green as of 2020. I know from looking at the registration database, we've got several hundred registered Greens in my county. As far as I can tell, there's no real organization here. There's no presence of the Green Party aside from just individuals like myself who are registered. I've done some searching online. I've found some web pages that seem to have been from the Stein campaign, 2016. I've reached out, emailed, heard nothing back. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I've got these skills. I have a desire. I would love to run a congressional campaign in 2024. That seems maybe too ambitious, but our local elections are nonpartisan. I want a Green on my ballot. That's what I want. Okay, so that's kind of a brain dump. I'm just looking for some advice on maybe my next step. Like, do I reach out to the state? There's the previous caller, so to speak. It sounds like they probably have a much better understanding than I do of what my next step could be. But given that mess of info, do you have any advice for me for next step?
Yeah, and I'm sure Rick can answer this. I'm sure Diana can answer this. Myself, Mike McAllister, if he's on the call. Yeah, I mean, that would be your next natural step, is to contact your state organization and see if there's any assistance you can do from there, or if you're in California, and correct me for the folks in California if I'm wrong in this, some sort of like regional local branch, whatever you want to call it, that would also be of service also. I mean, that's what I would do if it was like in Illinois or even Wisconsin. If someone came out to me and they said, I can't get any local data, where I need to go to, I'd say, go to talk to these folks at the state level, and they can provide you that information.
AJ, could I have a direct response to that?
Yeah. So
when you're done, I don't mean to interrupt, but when you're done. As it happens, the committee that I'm talking about at the state level is what used to be called the Grassroots Organizing Working Group. And the principal purpose of that group was to help counties organize. This purpose will continue with the new committee, which is now called the Membership and Organizing Committee or something like that. So this is what we try to do. And if you want to put your email on the chat, I can let you know about our next meeting where we invite people. Last month, we had a guy who was trying to revitalize Riverside County, for example. And we have somebody from Orange County who is rebuilding the Green Party in Orange County. So the sorts of things you're talking about, I think, would fit right into the mission of our group. And one of the people who's active is not in Santa Cruz County, but in Santa Clara.
Okay,
So
that's pretty close enough.
yeah, well, with Zoom, everything's close, and also far away at the same time. So, like I say, if you want to if you feel comfortable, put your email in the chat, and you already. Oh, I see it. Okay, great, and I'll add you on to the Zoom invite for the next meeting, which will be the second Tuesday of August, whenever that is. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
Sorry,
Sean, is that
yeah, whoever was just speaking, was that Rick? Rick, would it be possible for you to also put in your email address so I can follow up if somehow I don't hear back?
Sure, let me
Something
write
goes wrong.
down Sean's. And then I will put it on the.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Ryan.
Hey there, I was wondering, as someone who works at a college, and I'm not sure if you ever have this issue or not, because it wouldn't really be you that does this, more so as the college. How do you get prospective players to come play for your guys' school? Like, do you like have a hand in trying to sway them? Like, what's a good way to do that? And I was thinking about.
You mean like my actual tennis players?
Yes, and I was wondering, I would like to use your, I guess you can say, charismatic skills to sway people over to my organization that I'm working on.
So outside of my Division I teams, which was Penn State, Northwestern, and Chicago State.
Oh, you paid for Penn State?
Yeah, I was the assistant coach, not the head coach.
Cool. Actually, that's my alma mater.
Oh, cool. So it was already built in the recruiting because we knew the players and we just reached out to them and we had the funding. And so it's like, hey, come play for us at 50% scholarship, 75% scholarship, whatever the case may be. But for the other schools, the D3s, the junior college, and high schools, well, not the high school, but my junior teams. I really had, I had to like really smooze it up a bit. And it's like, look, you could be playing for this team, but you're not going to get the experience like I have, having a little over a decade of experience, having, coaching the players I've had to coach and everything. The training I have done over the years, here's what practice is going to look like. I show them the playbooks that we have, the tournaments that we're going to be doing. I apologize with that motorcycle. And so I just lay it all out and being transparent as much as possible of here's what you're going to get when you play for this team when it comes to recruiting and everything. And just like in the Green Party or organizations, I would say kind of do that same approach where, so a number of years ago, 2010 in the Illinois Green Party, when we had ballot access, we put 50 people on the ballot. I recruited, myself and others recruited 40 people of those candidates to be on the ballot. So that means I had coffee with them, dinner with them, things of that nature. And it's like, look, you could go to be the progressive Democrat and all this, but this is what's going to happen. Being someone who used to be on the Democratic Party side at one time, this is what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to play out. here's how it's going to play out when you're over here. Here's the attention you're going to get. Here's the kind of things that are going to happen for you and everything, And so we got some folks on that side for those very reasons, So like to your question, it's really about, providing a very transparent conversation without lying to them. In other words, don't promise them things that they're not going to get, not give me any guarantees over anything, just be totally upfront and like, here's what I have. Here's what this organization has. And this is why you need to be, this is why you're an asset. This is why you will be an asset for this organization and everything. So that has worked in my favor. Sometimes it didn't work as much as I thought it was going to be. And my one story with that really quickly is I recruited a kid from Ohio, really talented player. He's like number 5 in the state at one time. And I met with him, flew him up to my way and met with him in Columbus. So I had funding to go down and visit with them and everything, and met with the parents, and all they had to do is sign a letter of intent. That's all you had to do. So we're going to make a big event. Just come to school, press, big media event and everything. Didn't hear from him. He essentially ghosted me. And here I am watching the Big Ten Network, and he's playing for Ohio State. And I go, why is he playing for Ohio State? Well, why is he playing in the national tournament nonetheless? Come to find out, I didn't know Ohio State are on trimesters. So when they recruited him, they got him in the third semester, and he signed up for classes, which means he's a player for the team. He was on scholarship. So he had no previous grades in the second or first trimesters. And so he was automatically on the national team without playing matches or anything else like that. So I lost to a player like that, even though he could have easily been on my team and everything. So all I'm saying is some things may not go your way, and that's the reality of it. So always be transparent as much as possible without providing guarantees that you're not going to provide. Did that answer your question, Ryan?
Yes, thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
And it's nice to hear did you go to Penn State, or were you just a coach at Penn State?
I was just a coach at Penn. I never went to Penn State. I never went there as a student. I was hired on.
But that's cool though. Which campus were you at?
State. Why is it escaping me? The main campus.
Oh, that's so cool. I was actually thinking about transferring there back when I was still in college. But yeah, it's happy to see you were not playing for Penn State, coaching Penn State. Well, at least as an assistant coach.
It was fun.
Her partner.
And her name is.
Any other questions?
Hello, I have a question.
Who this? Who that?
Eugene.
Who's that?
Eugene.
Oh, go
Walls,
ahead, Eugene.
Connecticut. I liked listening to your presentation with a sports angle, particularly how a coach has to look at it, not just the player. And for me, sports provide an opportunity at the grassroots level to try to talk to people politically. At 79 years old, I still actively go to about 7 local basketball courts in the Hartford area and play pickup games. and sometimes are able to engage in political discussions. When you do this presentation again, I'd like you to try to bring in historical examples to illustrate what you're talking about, because I can see it from a sports point of view, but it's hard for me to sense what it would be like in the 1850s when the Republican Party was forming and was going to bust through and create, a victorious party in 5 years. And what were the sports analogies that would help me to understand why that took place? Or the 1930s or the 1960s, or under a repressive, patriotic, wartime economy like the IWW faced in World War I. Under those conditions, how can your insights help me to know what to do better as a Green Party member? Over.
No, I thank you for that. I had not thought about providing a historical analysis. I've done it for other presentations for sure, just not this specifically. But yeah, to your point, there is some things that we can take from in history, political history, where that we can learn from. And even to your point really quickly, like the Republicans during the 50s.
Brian, Zoom link.
Okay. So like the Republicans, like during the 50s, after Goldwater, and I talk about this in other presentations also, and I use this example primarily, where you had Republicans then trying to win every office up into Reagan, so winning from the local race to getting around Reagan, not elected once, but twice, and then trying to maintain that kind of conservatism up until George H.W. Bush, so yeah, I mean, there's that. And then that was also meaning, thinking strategically about uniting different conservatism there, the evangelicals, the fiscal conservatives, the William Buckleys of the world, and so bringing them, and they had to think about this, and there are still think tanks to this day, Heritage Foundation, the American Conservative Union, just to name a couple, that were kind of spawned from that strategic thinking, and the Democrats have done the same thing. So yeah, to your point, and I thank you for that, and I will do that next time around when I present this here or elsewhere. So thank you, Eugene.
Yes, one other point is what Steve Bannon is doing in his War Room presentations, 4 hours a day on his internet show. He's done 1,700 of them, starting in December of 2020, right after the election. And his strategy is precinct strategy. And he wants to pump his conservative evangelical people into the local precinct to become local precinct captains and take over the Republican Party, because the structure of both parties has atrophied. And they have 100, the claim in an article that CNN did based on a 1 hour show on Bannon, but the theoretician, Arizona lawyer who wrote a book, but he claims that 100,000 of those precincts are empty. In the Republican Party, 50% of the precincts are empty. And it shows where all the top down, the money and all that stuff, and they've let the structure wither to nothing. Over.
Thank you. I was just trying to check on time, and I apologize for the next presenter that we went over a few minutes. So I'm just going to end this, if I can.